Hello, Algebra 1. Today we're looking at lesson 9.3, finding the inverse of functions. And basically the main thing I want you to remember is that if anybody asks you to find the inverse of an equation, you're just going to swap x and y. Swapping x and y is going to get you the inverse of an equation or function. So notice the definition here. It says the inverse of a function is when you switch the inputs and outputs of the original function. Well, inputs is represented by x, outputs y, so you're swapping x and y. This first example here, it says graphing a function and its inverse. They want us to graph it and then graph the inverse, so we can take a look at that. To graph this, it looks like it's linear, so we can do, and it's written in slope-intercept form. So our slope's going to be 3 over 1, our y-intercept's going to be 1. We should be able to make a pretty good graph with that data right there. Get a straight edge. All right, so y-intercept at 1, slope up 3 over 1, repeat it a few times. Also go down 3, back 1 will also be on the line. And yeah, we got a pretty good line right there once we connect all those dots. Okay. Now they want us to graph its inverse. Well, there's two ways to go about that. One way to go about that is to swap x and y, and then we'll get y by itself. We'll rewrite it in slope-intercept form. Another way to do it is to look at coordinates on the line and swap x and y for each coordinate. For example, this point right here is at 2, 7. That means the inverse graph is going to be at 7, 2. And yeah, and you could do that. You could do that a few more times and you'd have enough points to make a line. It's kind of interesting. But I don't want you to take my word for it. I would like for you to also practice swapping x and y. And then let's get it in slope-intercept form. So we'll subtract the 1 over. Divide everything by 3. So I'm going to put y out front just to be more typical. Y is equal to, and I'm going to write it as 1/3 x. That way we can clearly see the slope is 1/3. Y-intercept is negative 1/3. And yeah, we're ready to graph. Now it's a little bit tricky because our y-intercept is a fraction, but we'll just kind of eyeball it down 1/3. And then when we do our slope, it's going to be up 1 over 3 from that fraction amount. So up 1 over 3 puts us about right there. Up 1 over 3 puts us about right there. Up 1 over 3 puts us about right there. We can also back it up. Down 1 over 3, down 1 over 3, down 1 over 3. So we started out down 1/3, and we kind of had to maintain that as we went through it. And check it out, when we connect these dots, guess what point we pass through? We pass through 7, 2. So yeah, anyway, it's kind of cool. So inverse, swapping x and y, swapping x and y. Okay, let's look at example 2. It says, write the inverse of each of the following linear functions and solve for y. So this is essentially what we just did, at least right here, that's what we did. So I'm just gonna go ahead and work it through. I'd encourage you to try it yourself. And then just double check and make sure that we both arrive at the same equation. All right, so when you've got yours worked out, double check my answers, see if we agree. I suppose you could write some of these answers differently. You might see some people write this one as just x minus 2 over negative 3, but I prefer to distribute the dividing by negative 3. It's because in slope-intercept form it'd be easier to graph. Over here, you might notice I multiplied by 5. I've noticed more and more with people using calculators all the time. They'll divide by 1/5, and that'll get you the same answers. Distributing your division of 1/5 is the same thing as multiplying, distributing by 5. Yeah, so hopefully our answers match there. If not, you might want to double check what you did and look at how I did it. Let's look on the back, see if there's anything else. So now they want us to find the right inverse functions, or inverse of radical functions. It's the same idea though, class, same idea, swap x and y. But then they want us to solve for y. So to get to this y, we need to first undo the square root, and we undo it by squaring. And then we'll get y by itself. I'll go ahead and write y out front. We'll make it y equals x squared minus 2. And that's all there is to it. And then over here, same sort of deal. I'm going to square things first. Oh, wait, before I do that, don't I need to swap x and y? So yeah, let me back up a little bit. Swap x and y to get the inverse. And then we'll square both sides. And then to get y by itself, probably add the 1 over first. Then divide everything by 3. And get y equals 1/3 x squared plus 1/3. And I like to write it like that as 1/3, because then you can see, oh yeah, that's a vertical shrink of 1/3. Yeah, so there we go. And one more for good measure. On this one, I'm not going to square first. Well, first I'm going to swap x and y. I keep wanting to skip that. Oops, minus 3. Yeah, I'm not going to want to square until I've got the square root isolated. So I'm going to add the 3 over first. Then I'm going to divide everything by 2. And now I get to square. Now this is a little wacky because I'm squaring this whole side here. And a common mistake is to think that I'm just squaring each one of these and that's it. But no, I'm taking the whole thing squared. So it's 1/2 x plus 3/2 times 1/2 x plus 3/2. And when we do that, we're going to get a middle term. Now, you've learned a pattern for this, and I really want to use the pattern, but you could just go ahead and write it twice. And when you write it twice and distribute, you're going to get the answer that I end up with. I'm still going to use the pattern because it's a little quicker. But you should end up with a 1/4 x squared. And then in the middle, you will get 3/2 x when you multiply this all out. And then in the back, you should get a 9/4. And that is the inverse solved for y and written in standard form. There might be some people, oh, and I guess I'll put the y out front here. You might be able to get away with just this right here, saying that y is equal to 1/2 x plus 3/2 squared, because some people consider that to be like a standard form as well. But yeah, that's it. So if you're finding inverse functions, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to swap x and y. That gets you your inverse. And then most commonly, after that, you do have to get y by itself. Thanks for watching.